This is another episode of Reflections, and I'm joined by my friend Tabs here from Alliance. How's it going?
Yeah, we're going pretty well, yeah.
Okay, so I did you in my Grilled series a while ago, but that was a long,
Yeah.
long time ago. That was when you were just still some young, beginning AD carry player who everyone remembered as this mid laner from Eclipsia. So,
Millennium.
yeah, Millennium,
Yeah.
exactly. So let's start actually with the period when you were in Lemon Dogs, because something I wanted to ask you about, like a bit more in depth than I've seen you talk about before, was when I've talked to some of the other players from Lemon Dogs, they told me this story that I actually mentioned in my Mithy article. Like, oh, Tabs was brand new to AD carry, and so what happened is
Yeah.
when we brought Mithy in, we told Mithy, like, you have to teach him how to lane, you have to like show him
Yeah.
what to do. And obviously Mithy has someone who had experience anyway, like playing with Freeze and doing the same thing, like adapting them a bit to his style. But when you answered your part in the interview article, it sounded like you were worried that people were going to give like too much credit to Mithy and kind of make it like he made you come, and you were just some guy full of,
Yeah.
yeah. So give me your side of it. Like, what's a reasonable viewpoint on this?
Well, I did think in the sense that Mithy really taught me how to like play the lane, as in when to trade, how to trade, and when to base. Those things. Like I was pretty good mechanically at just playing AD carry and like team fighting, farming. I could do all of that stuff, but I just didn't know like the little details of the lane, like and how to press advantages and stuff. And like that's really what he taught me how to do, like all the little details of the lane. He was really good at that, and he had like the really good personality for it too. Because if he saw I fucked up, like, or he thought I did something wrong, he would like instantly call it out. Like he would say like, yeah, you fucked up, you should have done this. And he would say like, yeah, we should base now, and stuff like that. It was really nice to have that as like a beginning AD player.
Is he the sort of person, as like sort of someone teaching or mentoring you at all, who's kind of, is he difficult to work with at all? Because I got the sense from talking to Freeze, like there's certain things Mithy's decided that, you know, you can't argue. It's just, that's the way it's going to be. Like, no, don't do that. Like, we're never doing that. What is he like in that sense?
So Mithy is the kind of person that if you want him to listen to you, he has to respect you. And in the start, when I started playing with him, I was like really bad at laning and AD carry and like laning in general. So I just listened to him and just took all his advice and did everything he wanted actually. And then once I got a bit better, like he started like listening to me too. And that's when we got like really good. But in the start, it was like, I was like, hey, can I play Wayne? I really like this. And I was like, no, we're only going to play Varus and Caitlyn because they're super strong in lane. And he never wanted to play with like a hyper carry or something because he was like really scared that we wouldn't be able to like be as good as we should be.
Well, that's actually something I wanted to touch on there, was obviously in the Lemon Dogs period, people said that you guys became the best bot lane, and then he said you were winning all the time in the bot lane. And I saw you say actually in I think it was on your Ask FM when you explained why Lemon Dogs were the best. That was one of the points you said. Like you made the point that every other team, like a lot of the bot lanes, for example, had a weakness. Okay, so Gambit didn't have Edward, and then some of the other ones had other problems, obviously.
Yeah.
The bot lane you actually had with Mithy, you're saying here like he didn't want you to play hyper carries, he didn't want to play that style. I've seen you say that you like aggressive style, like you want to carry the game, right? So
Yeah.
how did you kind of weigh that up? How were you able to become really good as a bot lane, but how much of it was playing the style you want, and how much was having to learn a new style?
In the start, like I said, like I just played whatever he wanted. So we just started up from the bottom pretty much. Like I listened to him, we just started up, and we played a lot. Like whenever we weren't screaming, we were just duo queuing, and we're just trying to get better and better because that's the kind of guy Mithy is. Like if he plays something, he wants to be the best, and he won't take no for an answer. So like eventually, just because we played so much, that's like eventually it just became like just really good. We had really good synergy. We knew exactly when to trade. It was really hard for enemy bot lanes to win against us, so we like always try to swap it and stuff. So yeah.
When you guys got the first place in the regular portion of the split, and you were going into the playoffs, everyone remembers that because of unfortunately the way the LCS season works, people tend to only remember how it ends. Okay, so even though you were top in the regular season, no one cares, right? Because Fnatic won the split. Yeah, they won the playoffs. I don't know how much you can say about this, but there's a story that goes that for some reason, some of the Lemon Dogs players, for whatever reason, couldn't perform to the maximum of their capabilities in said final. Do you think that final was like really representative of who was the better team? What do you think, Tabs?
Well, I think we definitely performed under capacity, so to speak. It's like, yeah, we did go out the night before that, and we were very tired. Like the finals was like 9 a.m. or some really early time like that, and we were just like in other words, we were just like kids, you know. We were just like 18-year-olds. Like we were like, oh, there's a party, let's go. And we had nobody to keep us in check. Like we were just on our own. We were just like us five, pretty much. Like we had a manager, but he was a party animal, and he didn't really give a shit. So he would just even encourage us to go party and buy us drinks and stuff. And yeah, like it was just a mess even. And some really stupid stuff happened that night. I can't really go into details, but Nukduk was also kind of sick the night before, and he really didn't get to sleep very well. And after we lost the first game to Fnatic, my team were like, it was completely quiet on TeamSpeak, right? Like it was silence, complete silence. And Nukduk was like, can we just please forfeit the series? I want to go sleep. I want to go home, you know? And I was like, no, we can win this. I was like trying to motivate my team. I was like, yeah, we're going to do this and pick this. Just give me Astro and I'll win the game. It's no problem. And we actually did win that one game, but we then lost the series.
Okay, so this is an interesting point, I think, because a lot of people who haven't seen any of the behind the scenes stuff, okay, are going to have a very different idea of what it's like to be a pro and to be an LCS, etc. Well, one of the strange things is, obviously, like, I think the difference between first and second place is like $20,000 or something in LCS. So in theory, it's still quite a lot of money. But because getting to the final means you automatically know you made it to Worlds, and that's like, I don't know, it's like 50 grand or something at least. How would you explain, like, to someone, like, how is it possible that your team wouldn't be like, well, come on, if we just don't go out this one night, we could win 20k more? Like, it really isn't that big a deal. Do pros just not think of money that way, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think any of us like really care about the money too much. It's like Mithy especially, like, he doesn't give a shit about money. Like same for Nuke, they were like, yeah, with this playoffs order, you're just gonna buy a bunch of Hearthstone packs and stuff, and they were just like stacking up on like Hearthstone packs, and it was just really fun. But they cared more about like going to Worlds and winning than like just the money at all. And that like first and second place, in a sense, I think that it was, yeah, quite meaningless to them, because the only thing was like money, because both of us were going to Worlds regardless.
One of the things about going into Worlds for your team was that obviously no one on your team had any experience at like the actual international level. You'd only played in European tournaments, and some of your players hadn't even been at like the top of the European level until that split. Yeah. So when you have other teams, okay, a lot of the most famous teams from the Western region, they have old school players in who've got a lot of experience, like playing those tournaments, playing Asians, all this sort of stuff. So I think people were actually worried before Lemondogs even came into the tournament, like, how will they react playing totally different players and styles they've never gone to? How would you describe the preparation? Like, was it good enough? Looking back now, did it seem like you were prepared enough as you went into the tournament?
The way we prepared was just as usual for the LCS season, and we didn't actually like look up to the Asian teams that much. We pretty much treated every opponent like they were like just their champions, you know, like they weren't like SKT, it was like Zed and this champion and this champion. Like we would always make fun of our enemies, and like in that sense we would give ourselves confidence that it was possible to beat them. So that's even why we picked stuff like Swain against SKT. We're like, yeah, we're just gonna pick fucking Swain and Singe and have this like really cool setup. And like it actually worked in Scrims and Neo. Like Nukduk actually carried a lot of games on Swain. It was like really fun to watch him 1-on-5 late game. And we're like, yeah, we can just get through lane phase with Swain, we can win. And yeah, the preparation, it was just, we boot camped in Sweden. We played a lot, but it wasn't like special with analysts and coaches stuff. Obviously, we had information on the enemy teams. We had some drafts prepared, but yeah, the preparation was pretty good.
So when you say there that approach of like, don't think of the player you're playing, just look at his champion, that's actually something I've heard other people say in esports. Like actually there's a famous StarCraft 2 player called Stefano who said the way he used to be good against Koreans was he wouldn't like think of the name, he'd just look at like the race he was playing and what style of race, and they think like, right, I've played that sort of player before, like I know how I'll approach the game. Even so, isn't there a degree to which when you say there, like we just picked Swain like we did in practice, like Faker's Ahri is a bit different to other people's Ahris, right? This must have been a conclusion that kind of was borne out to you at that event.
Yeah, like once we actually played the game against SKT, because in Europe it was like we could pick Swain and we could make a mistake or something could happen and we could still bring it to late game and we could win easily, right? But when we played against SKT, if you gave Faker like one kill, and like they would just take the whole map with pinks. They would just pink our blue, they would pink our red, they would invade everything, and just they knew exactly in this meta how to close out games with just a small advantage. Like it was really impossible to play against them if you. It's just felt impossible to win against them at Worlds, really.
The thing about your group was it was almost the worst sort of group for your sort of team, in as much as, like, as a bot lane, you had to face SKT, who people thought had like the best bot lane of all. Then you had to face TSM, who people thought had the best Western bot lane. And then the one team in theory who were good but had a lesser bot lane was OMG. But they come from China, where every game you play against some godlike bot lane. So you'd think like this should be the worst environment to have to play as a bot lane, right? What was it like overall for you in the lane, do you think, in that tournament?
I think actually we did all right, but I think Mithy was kind of nervous because he's the kind of guy that respects Koreans a lot. So he was like kind of nervous. He was like getting caught quite a bit and not playing the lane as well as he should have. But overall, it went better than I expected. Like we learned a lot playing against them, because those bot lanes, the way they traded, they would always trade together. They would never, like for every CS, they would always trade together. So whenever you go for a CS, they make sure that you take punishment, and whenever they go for CS, they make sure they don't get punished. It was really like a learning experience to play against them and scrimming against them.
I realize when you came home from Worlds that obviously the situation with TSM and Bjergsen and Nip, that affected what happened to Lemondogs. But even so, what's funny is I remember when Lemondogs broke up, all of you initially sounded like a bit bitter, like well, everyone's seen like Dex's famous thing where it's kind of sounded like he was like throwing Nukeduck under the bus, and then people have said different things where it sounded like they were a bit salty. But what's funny is I've noticed a few months later now, everyone's like super friendly on Twitter now, and you all talkers are like, you know, imagine if we played again together. Like if that team was the best in Europe and you all rose up together, aside from the Nip shit and all the good offers, etc., could you not just have stayed together as a five? I mean, that'd be a good team still right now in LCS, right?
Yeah, definitely. We could even be top 3 LCS easy if we were 5 right now, I think.
So why could it not just stay together? Why did it have to break up?
Yeah, basically because Nukeduck is the kind of guy that if he thinks he knows what is for the best for him, like, he will go for that no matter what. And at that time, he thought Herakibot is the best jungler in EU West. I really want to play with Herakibot no matter what. And the way he could do that is by going, like Nip also offered him the position to play there with Herakibot as well, because I think they actually contracted him at the time.
Yeah, I think
from
so.
SK. And yeah, that's basically what happened. Like they made that decision to play with that roster because they thought they could, like Nukeduck thought he could be they could be the best team in Europe, like, and win Worlds with this lineup. That's what he thought. That's why he went for it.
So I won't say I know this. Let's just say I'm using like my deductive powers to try and make an educated guess here. Yeah. So everyone in the normal world thinks what happened is, you know, Nukeduck was contacted to replace Bjergsen, and then he sort of said, well, you know, I come with Zoro, he comes with me, and then also I'm going to bring Mithy in. Like, we'll make it, because, you know, Deficio, you'll step out, and we'll bring the 3 guys in, and we'll make our team. And, you know, I mean, it's ideal for everyone in public thinks, well, that's a great setup, because, you know, Mithy's played with Freeze, and then that's an obvious bot lane. But I'm going to guess, I'm going to use my, like, psychic powers here, and read people's minds from a long time ago. I'm going to guess there was actually a possibility that it was like, do we take Freeze or do we bring Tabs with us? Like, we could have brought Tabs with us to Nip. And for whatever reason, you know, flip a coin, whatever, they went with Freeze in the end. Is there any truth to this? Could you have been in Nip now?
Yeah, definitely. Like, they just chose Freeze over me to go to Nip. If they chose me, I would probably be with Nip, either in LCS or playing Amateur at that time.
So, I mean, like, what does that do? I mean, in theory, you had this awesome bot lane. Why did they not choose you? What do you think the reasoning was? Was it something about your play or what?
No, apparently not. Like, from what I was told is that they thought Freeze would be more loyal to the organization. That's literally the words I've been like told. Like, that's why they took him over me.
Was there a degree to which? Oh, so it was the organization itself or the players? Like in this sense. I mean, there must be a degree to which you feel like, what the fuck? Like, I thought we were part of a team here. Like, you guys are leaving me?
Yeah, like, me and Dexter felt like fucking ditched, really. Like, like, okay, well, we get number one in LCS, so we go to Worlds. Okay, we don't make it out of groups, so we do pretty decent for our first split. It's like new players. So like, okay, you guys just ditch us and go to Dip and create this new team and leave us behind. Yeah, we felt ditched. That's why we were bitter as well on Twitter and stuff. Like, we're like, wow, this fucking sucks. Like, we fucking hated each other for a while.
Okay, so afterwards you get into the super team, you get into Froggen's alliance team. Now here's the funny thing about that I don't think people have picked up on, is that Freeze was like the first choice for that team as well. So what I want to ask you is, okay, I made this point to Freeze as well in another interview. Whenever you hear people who have been like really good bot lane partners together, whenever they're like separated, they almost like look at someone else who got to play with that bot lane partner and like mentally compare themselves, like, oh, he does that wrong, like he should be playing this way for that guy. What do you think of Freeze when you've seen him playing with Mithy? I mean, you've played with Mithy for so long, you've been in different teams. Like, what do you think of Freeze as a player compared to you?
Well, compared to me, I think he plays a bit safer. Like, I think he's a really consistent player in that sense. Like, he will never really make mistakes, but he never really will try to make plays either. Like, he's just a, how do you call it? Like, an asset to the team in that sense. I think that's also what Nukeduck wanted. Like, he wanted someone who would be like, he would do exactly what he wanted him to do, because that was his idea about the marksman role. But yeah, Freeze with Mithy, I heard that when they initially started playing again, Mithy was actually like crying to me on Skype. He was like, well, like playing with Nip is going like so horrible. Like playing with Freeze is going so horrible at the moment. Like he just wanted to come back to B so badly. He like wanted to even apply to Alliance and just say, fuck the whole Nip idea. I want to join Alliance. That's like how bad it went apparently between them in the start.
So when you describe it like that Nukeduck wanted like this, but I hate the fact that he's using marksman anyway. Like fuck that term. Like he wanted an AD carry. Yeah. Okay, he wanted this marksman who was going to like be under control or whatever. Isn't there a degree to which in Alliance, when I think of the style of play, one of the problems Alliance sometimes had when it was losing was people being too hesitant. Okay, not knowing when to like take a fight, or just not looking like they were in the right frame of mind. From all your answers I've heard you give, like on your Ask FM and AMAs and stuff, it sounds like you really want to like travel back in time to season 2, and you want to be like the hyper carry. You want to be like Wei Zhao or something. Listen, guys, I'm going to carry the whole game. Just get me to 6 items. Like this is how you want to play, right? You want to be the aggro guy at killing everyone, right?
Yeah, that's also why I played the assassin mid style a lot. Like I would play Fizz and I would just win the game alone so easily. I could just get a kill on mid and then kill their jungler, kill their top lane, and win the game by my own pretty much. Like in that sense, I'm a very like lone wolf-ish player where I really like to have a lot of influence on the game myself without having to rely too much on others. So that's why the whole concept of being a carry really appeals to me. Because I really like that, yeah.
So how has that worked out in Alliance then? Because if people look at Alliance, they're going to think, oh, that's Froggen's team. Froggen's the star there. He's going to kill everyone. Let's just keep him alive mid lane. And so, Shook, listen, you 24/7. I need you looking at mid lane here. Sometimes go top lane when that guy up there does weird stuff and needs help. Like, when do you get the kind of ganks for bot lane that you need to carry the whole game? Like, how does the balance work out for you?
Actually, Froggen is like surprisingly lenient with this. He's like really humble in that sense. Like, he's not like, sure, gank my lane and I will carry this game and don't give a shit about bot lane or top lane. Just let them rot. Just help me. No, that's not really how it goes. Like, he's like very respectful in that sense that he knows what he has to do to make his team win and he trusts all his players. It's actually really different from when it was with Lemondogs, because Nukeduck was pretty much the opposite of that. He was the kind of player that, okay, so what happens is like I am playing the AD carry and I see a big, let's say like 5 minion waves heading to our bot tower, and I can grab all that farm and like there's 5 seconds on Nukeduck's death timer and I'm already running there, right? And Nukeduck's like, no, Tabs, you turn around, you go to mid lane right now, and I'm gonna take all that farm. And like it would be like that with everything. Like he would, like I was basically, as an AD carry, I was more of like a utility backup support-ish kind of player, where I would just support the team and push out the lanes in Siege, and then he would be the carry.
I mean, in Lemondogs, that obviously worked at the time. Maybe something to do with an assassin meta or other teams.
Yeah.
How do you think it worked in NIP? Because it sounded like, from everyone I've talked to, like NIP was basically just like Lemondogs version 2, still doing like the 1-3-1 split push like every game and like just trying to do the same thing, right?
Yeah, I think they didn't even change any of their strategies completely, and I think they just also got completely outpicked in their draft phases against KMT at the time. But yeah, like if you want to compare my role to Freeze in that one, I think it's like what Nukdog wanted is like pretty much the same. Like Freeze was basically doing my role, like I would do in Lemondogs.
So in Alliance, one of the big problems that EG had before they became Alliance was that people said because Wicked wasn't as, let's just say, as potent as he was in Season 2, his role on EG was the secondary carry. He had to be really good in top, in theory, because Froggen can't just win like 1v9 the whole game. So coming into Alliance, people would have thought it's going to be a similar thing. But I think a lot of people now look at Tabs and say like, oh, he's the second carry on Alliance. Like that's his role. Do you kind of see that as where you're fitting in?
Yeah, I think from the past experiences of our team as well, and like how we play right now, it's like, yeah, I think I fulfill that role of being the second carry.
Is that where you want to be in your career right now? Is that like the right place for you?
Well, like obviously everyone wants to be in the spotlight and be the carry of the team, but I'm okay. Like I can make my debut someday, I guess, like when I deserve it.
So when you answered that question about the reason, you sort of made it quite humble, like, yeah, Lemondogs is the best, but we were the best just because we didn't have like a weak flaw. Whereas everyone else had one like flaw or one weak spot that was like obvious and so they could be taken advantage of, whereas we just won all the lanes and so we win the game, you know. When you said it like that, you gave this quite honest like sort of appraisal of each team, just saying like, this is the problem with this one. If I asked you to do something similar for the last split, like where would your bot lane have been and what would the others have been like? Like which ones were strong, which ones had problems? Where do you think you stacked up?
You want to compare our bot lane players like as a duo lane compared to the other bot lanes?
All the other European ones.
I actually don't think we were like top 3 bot lanes in this split. I think we had a lot of problems, especially early on. The best ones would probably be Forgiven and Unlimited were really good. Yeah, Reckless and Misha, although Misha was like quite suicidal. He would play really aggressive in bot lane. He would just he's the kind of player that doesn't care about the jungler. He would just play Karma every game or Leona and just like stay in your face all day long and like make them win lane that way. Like, and if you do spend your jungle resources there, then the rest of their map could take an advantage out of that. So other lanes, like Fnatic's duo lane, really consistent, not very playmakey. They won't ever make a mistake and they will capitalize on what you do, but they won't force it as much as Unlimited, Forgiven, and Rallis and Misha would. Like those two would try to force the fights much more than Fnatic's does. So you can basically just free farm against Fnatic's lane, not really much problems unless you mess up. I don't think Rocket's duo lane was very strong. I think Vander is a very good player, actually. I think he's like one of the best supports in EU, but I think their AD is like a big weakness. I don't think he capitalizes very well on any mistakes, and he tends to make a lot of mistakes himself. Other bot lanes.
Gambit, maybe?
Gambit. With Edward, yeah. I don't think Gambit's bot lane was that strong either, this split. They didn't seem much stronger than the summer split with Voidal, really. I do think that they lost. Gambit as a whole has been losing some of their flair that they used to have. I don't think they've grown any better since like Season 3 started, like till now. They haven't really gone any better, but the other teams have consistently been improving, so even past their level. And that's why you see like every split, like Gambit does like slightly worse, and even the last split, they were almost in relegations. So that's like how Gambit has been going lately. And the same goes for their bot lane. They weren't very impressive either.
SK Gaming?
I think SK Gaming had a stronger bot lane when Nif was playing with Candy Panda. Then they would have like a more dominant bot lane. And Rated was the kind of guy who would play like weird picks and stuff. Like he picked Kayle and Galio and all that kind of stuff. He wasn't the best mechanical player, but he was very good at leading his team to the right objectives and making the right calls. So their lane was a bit weaker than usual, but so I wouldn't really place them top 3 either. I would say they were around our level, like me and Nif.
What about Millennium?
Um, Karaton and Jerry, right? Oh, this is like such a hard bot lane to talk about because they're like so weird. Like some games they will be crazy good, right? And they'll be really, really good. And they can beat even the best bot lanes. But then the other days they will just like screw up all the time and they will lose. And they will lose their team the game.
When you talk about Nif, one of the things that I had, people agreed with my theory, okay, when your team was doing not so well, and I thought back to that story about Mithy, it kind of made sense, okay, if Mithy had something to do with how Tabs plays the lane and sort of leads it to some degree, at least early on, well then people always thought in SK, okay, Candy Panda sort of leads that bot lane a bit. And so you had this brand new bot lane formed in Alliance of two players who were kind of used to the other guy setting the tone of what we're going to do, and you're just kind of both like, okay, so do I say what to do now? Do you like? Was there any of those problems initially?
Yeah, definitely. It was also because right away in season 4, the meta changed a lot. It went from pokey supports and hyper carries to you have like the Lucian, Jinx, Sivir, and the heavy engaged supports like Annie and Leona and stuff. And since I took quite a break in the off season, like a month, because the Lemon Dogs grinding the season really made me burn out, so I had to take a little break from the game. So when I came back, the game had changed so much that it took me a long time to adapt, so I couldn't lead that lane either. And I think same counted for Nif. Like he was kind of new to that style as well, so both of us had to like completely relearn how to play bot lane and with a new partner. So in the start we had a lot of issues that way, like neither of us could really lead it. Like both of us were just like throwing around ideas like what could we do, what could we pick, what should we really do to win this lane. And yeah, it caused us to be really weak early, and I think actually in the start we did really poorly.
When you think of how Nif used to play in SK, how different is how he plays in Alliance, do you think, overall? Do you bring something different out of him? Do you play differently to Candy did with him?
I think when I think back of playing lane against Nif and Candy, I think Nif was playing very aggressive because he felt very comfortable in the meta and his partner in that sense. So he would always be trying to trade and trying to look for engages. When he started playing with me, it was the complete opposite. Like he was playing very scared. He was not really looking for trades. He was like basically hiding behind me in lane a lot of the time. And that was not how you had to play the lane at that time. So it took us a long time. Like I think right now, like me and Nif are confident in each other and we're actually making a lot of like good plays in lane and we play very well. But in the start, it was like just a mess, really.
When you think about the bad start to LCS, so one of the areas I imagine must have been a problem must have been the bot lane, because the difference is some of the other positions, okay, some of them had played together longer in the super team like Shook and Froggen, and some of them can just focus on their own lane. But if you're having to make a brand new partnership, and you actually got Nif relatively late in the game, you know, like after the promotions and stuff, so how much of the early period was some of the problems that you guys were experiencing, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think we were like losing the game, but we definitely didn't win the game for our team either. Like we didn't do anything wrong, we didn't do anything right in that sense. I think the main problem wasn't really us though in the early start. It was more like the team as a whole very much had no direction and really lacked decisiveness of when to engage, how to do things. We had really bad situational awareness, so we wouldn't know how to capitalize on situations, and we would always give up every objective without trading one in return, and that was really terrible. But also one thing I want to touch on in this sense is the other bot lanes. A lot of stronger bot lanes came into play in season 4, so you really couldn't get away with having a weaker bot lane, especially in the start. The style of play in that meta was really around the bot lane. It was really important to have like a really strong bot lane, and all the ganks were on bot lane with like Wukong and Pantheon combined with like Sivir and an engage support. You would have a lot of 3v3 fights around the bot lane, so it was really important to have a strong bot lane at that time. And there was a lot of new talent, like Forgiven and Unlimited really strong. Like Fnatic just got Reckless and they became a lot stronger, and like Rollis entered the scene, and so suddenly you had like 3 really strong bot lanes that you can't get away with being subpar against those players. So that's why we had some troubles against those teams, yeah.
So from doing all my interviews during LCS, I heard this story over and over, which goes like this. I would ask players when Alliance was doing badly, like, oh, what do you think of their team? And no one would ever say, oh, they're bad. Yeah, they'll be bottom 2 at the end of the split, even though your record was terrible. Because everyone was telling me, no, in scrims, they win like every scrim. And then I spoke to Froggen and them, and he was telling me, yeah, people just quit after like 10 minutes, or we were just winning every lane and we were just owning everyone.
Yeah.
Is this really is there, what I want to know is, isn't this holding Europe and the West back if people get stomped in 5 minutes and they quit the scrim? Like, how are people? Isn't this going to stop like practice getting to a higher level?
On the one hand, I think no, because I think it's also us being taking the practice not the way we should. Like, our practice was very inefficient. We were basically treating our pre-made games like they were solo queue games. We would play without direction. We would just play our lanes. We just, okay, we win. Like, we won our lanes, and now what? We, like, the enemy surrenders after, like, say 15 minutes, right? The early game's over. Like, we won the early game. We played it like a solo queue game. Like, Shook just played this really strong early game style, ganked mid a lot, Froggen got rolling, snowballed, ganked sides. We won, right? That's how it goes. And then the enemies, we just surrender because we were so strong, and they didn't really have any way to win. But that's also because in scrims, players play very differently than they do in LCS. They would play very aggressive and pick fights with us all the time. And that was like our turf. Like, we were good at picking fights and outplaying people mechanically. But as far as playing the map and playing the objective goes, we were just really terrible at that. So we never really got to learn how to trade objectives and how to rotate properly, because all happened is like we got people fed in the early game and the enemy would surrender.
How much of that style actually was showcased in the streak of the 10 out of 12 games you won towards the end of the season? How much of it was actually picking up tactical stuff, and how much was just being able to do what you'd been able to do in scrims but you hadn't before,
Yeah, the patch definitely changed in our favor at that time. Like, I think even Doran Shield got nerfed, so bot lane was like easier to play. Like, Wukong and Pantheon got nerfed, so the whole meta changed around. Like, Shook didn't really hated Wukong and Pantheon. Like, he really despised those two champions, even though they were like really strong in that meta. So the patch really changed in our favor. We managed to outdraft every single team pretty much. Like, we had like an 8 win streak going. It was really easy to draft because a lot of teams had like a weakness, and that weakness was really exploitable in that patch. So let's say SHG and Wolves, both teams really rely on their bot lane to win games. So what we would do is like we just draft Caitlyn, Thresh, and have our jungler stay bot all the time, and like ban Lucian, because all those teams rely on Lucian to win their bot lane. And we were just like win our bot lane, and then whoa, suddenly we like, if we win bot lane, like not just go even or farm, like we win it, and then it was so easy to win games. In mid and top also, the patch really allowed for better drafting on our part. It wasn't so much our strategic advancement. Like, we did become better at objectives, but I think the main thing was the patch changing in our favor.
When you got into the playoffs and you had this scenario where for a little while Copenhagen Wolves had you in trouble, then you got to play Fnatic, and then maybe you thought you were going to win, but then you lost to them. Then you lost to Roccat overall. So all in all, 3 weird series for the team that had been so dominant at the end of the split, basically. How much of the problems in the playoffs were like similar problems you'd had during the split, and how much was like something new went wrong or something like that? What do you think the balance was?
So let's start against the series against Wolves. I think we drafted pretty well against them. It's just that they would never allow us to like finish any game at all. It was like they would try to make the game last as long as possible, so they could give like Forgiven all the farm on the map, and they would like make him as strong as possible, and then it was basically up to him to carry or not. And then if he made one mistake, the game was lost. And in our playoffs, he definitely did make some positional mistakes, so we could catch him out. And then once he was dead, the team fight was won in our favor. So yeah, that's basically how the Wolves matchups went, like 3 games. And again, against Fnatic, we threw a lot. Like, the first game, we overstayed in team fights, and we just got caught a lot, made bad calls, caused them to just roll over us with their heal comp. Even though I was playing Jinx in that first game, I can still remember, and I was like really fed after the lane swap. I had 240 CS at 20 minutes or something, and I told my team, like, if we don't die in team fights, I can kill everyone if I get a red buff. But what we did is we just overstayed. Like in team fights, we went in too deep. We just got killed, and we lost our team fights because of that. And gave up a Baron, gave up stupid objectives, lost our first game. And our second game we won. I can't really remember how it went.
That was the one where Froggen just went ham on Ziggs and killed everyone, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's true actually. Froggen played out of his mind that game, and Peke really underperformed on Zed as well. That difference alone made us win that game, I think, because both side lanes were losing at the time, and Froggen kept us in the game long enough to just win straight up, force objectives. Third game, I think I pretty much like solo lost the game by dying 2v2. It was like really horrible by me because I'm used to playing bot lane where there's only 2 brushes. So I go top lane 2v2. I check the first brush and I think I'm safe. And then there's like a Morgana hiding in the second brush, you know, the middle brush. So I just take a biting to the face and me and Niv both die. And then we lose our tower and then it just snowballed from there. And they just went mid and bot and took everything. And it's really like you can't have that kind of mistake happening when you have a Fizz mid. It's really important that you don't allow your enemies to rotate out of their lanes.
So when you first joined Alliance, you'd played with Nukeduck before, who in theory might have been like the best mid laner in the summer split. You've played yourself as mid lane in the past, so you've got experience like seeing all the good mids or playing against all the good mids. You must have already, obviously, from being a mid laner, known a lot about Froggen already. Like played him, played against him, seen him play. Now you get to play with him. Has playing with him changed how you think of him at all? Is he the same person you expected before you played?
No, not at all. Actually, it changed a lot because when I played mid against Froggen, I didn't really think very highly of him because he was the kind of player that would never really pick fights with you. He would just play lane and he would farm a lot. He would just farm for farm. And like he would never really lose lane either. He would always try to get advantages through small things. Like doing little trades, like hiding behind corners and throwing skill shots and farming more race than you could. And it was very effective, but I didn't respect that style of play at all because I was the assassin player that really liked to pick fights and like gain big advantages in snowball games. But now I played with him a lot. Like he never really actually, like that style of play is actually very efficient in the current meta as well. He never loses lane whatsoever. I'd never seen him lose lane in so long. He never loses tower. He always like solo kills the enemy, and it kind of changed my opinion of him because I used to think not that great of him in a sense because I was like a rival of him. I was like the other mid laner, so I could never really give too much credit to the enemy mid laner, you know, because then I would not be confident in my own play to beat them. But now, from an objective point of view, I think that he's just as good as ever. Like it's really hard to say. Like my opinion changed for the better for sure.
When you had joined Alliance already, I had a conversation with you where we were reminiscing on old players, and you told me you thought Extinct was the best mid laner ever. And I was like, well, you're in the team with Froggen now though, right? And you were like, no, he's the best ever. Like, did it change since then? You don't have to say it just because you're in Froggen's team, you know?
Okay, I'm willing to answer this question actually. It's basically back then, it was because I played a lot against Extinct. And he was the kind of player I was. So in every scrim we would play, like one of us would die. Like every time in every lane phase, one of us would die before level 6 even. And like one of us would always snowball their lane. And that's why I respected him so much because he was never afraid to pick fights. He really knew what to do in every situation. He was really dominant. It was very hard to beat him in the kind of style that he played and I played. And I think he was actually like better than me at playing that style on many champions. I think I was like only better on Fizz and Ahri pretty much at that time. And yeah, that's why I respected him so much because I thought he was just really, really strong in our kind of little style of play. And I can't really say that like my opinion changed in that sense. Yeah, like I respect Froggen for his style of play and I respect Extinct for his style of play as well.
Okay, perfect, because that sets up, okay, that you're not necessarily just biased to Froggen here. I mean, you play in a team with Froggen now, but you're saying in another sense, you also respect this guy as maybe as good or better because you prefer that style, okay? The reason I've set it up like that, because I thought this would be interesting, okay? You don't play mid lane anymore, so, you know, what do you care how good people are? You'll give your honest opinion, you know, you're not a rival anymore, which is a problem in interviews. So you can probably see where I'm going here. I need someone who can give me the real answer. So I need someone who's played against Faker, and I need someone who's played with and against Froggen, and I need to know if we put the two together. Everyone wants to know, man. What do you think would happen?
What Faker versus Froggen?
Yeah, in a real game.
Oh God! Wow.
I mean, Froggen would tell you he wouldn't lose the lane, right?
Yeah, especially not if it's Karthus versus LeBlanc, but
yeah, who would be rushing to get the Karthus first? That's the problem, you know.
Yeah, I would love to see that matchup. Really, it would be really fun to see. I don't think Froggen would lose, like as in get snowballed on, because he's really perfect in his style of play, where he never gets snowballed on, and he always knows how to stay in the lane. And it's just like I'm really interested in seeing this matchup, because I know that Faker is like the kind of aggressive player that like me and Xink maybe were. So it's kind of, you would have those two styles like square off against each other, and that would be really interesting for me to see. I can't really say who is gonna be better, because I don't know. Like I don't know who's gonna win that. So I can't really answer that question for you in that sense.
So when you played with Nukeduck, okay, here's a good reference point, because Nukeduck has a public perception that he's like toxic or whatever, but he's not really. He's just like a cocky guy, okay? Yeah. Which isn't even a big deal, by the way, for anyone watching this. Like most pros, if they get good, are quite cocky at the time they're good, you know. Well, the thing is, he's the sort of cocky person where, okay, maybe until you prove something to him, like you beat him, he'll think like he's better than you. But if you beat him, like Faker did, he'll be like, okay, well, you know, if I talk shit to people worse than me, I have to admit Faker was better than me, okay? So yeah. I thought Nukeduck was one of the few people who mentally might have been able to go up against Faker, because I know the rest of them, even if they say they think they do well, they sort of, well, it's like the joke whenever they lose to people. Now people are like, hey, I got a kill on Faker. Like, come on, like if you're actually a peer of his, you wouldn't be saying that as like a joke even, you know. Well, I get the sense that Froggen might be the only other person before playing Faker who really thinks like, nah, I could probably beat him, you know, or I could do as well, or he isn't like some god who's going to be out there. What's his personality like in that sense, Froggen's?
Yeah, like I think that Froggen has a very high confidence level in himself. He will definitely respect Faker for being him, but he won't let it get to him. I know, like Froggen has actually really good mental fortitude in that sense. Like he will never let it get to him that he's playing against Faker, and he will still play just as good against anyone else.
Did people in Alliance, anyone, have any kind of problems during the season when you were having the bad period? Like it sounded when I talked to Froggen, like even when you were losing all those games, no one was really going crazy and like having big arguments or whatever. But do you think anyone ever suffered, or was something had to change for people to get better in that sense, aside from just the game stuff, you know?
I think one of our big lacks, our big problems, was that people just didn't talk enough as well. It's like that's like ingrained to people's personalities as well, or them just being lazy. But we had way too little information going on our TeamSpeak, and I think like especially like Shook and Nif at the time didn't really talk at all. Nif didn't really talk to me and Lane at all, what he wanted to do, how he wanted to play. So that's why we lost ball lane a lot. And Shook would never really call anything he's doing, and that's like was really really detrimental for us, because he's like the jungler, he controls the game, and if we don't know what he's doing, we can't play accordingly, and he can't play accordingly to us either. So I think that definitely those two really had to change a lot, and it's happened. Right now when we're scrimming, they're actually talking a lot more. I think that's also got to do with the fact that we're playing with like two analysts at the moment as well. It really helps a lot to bring out those kind of issues and to repair them.
So when Alliance got knocked out of the playoffs, an area that came up again as a discussion point was like the shot calling of Alliance. Like, do they have the right shot calling? Do they have the right player doing it? Like, no one actually outside of the team even knew who was doing the shot calling. Like, has progress been made on that front? Is it something that there's something still needs to be done, do you think?
There's still a lot of room for improvement, but we've definitely made big steps already. Especially considering the start, our TeamSpeak was completely silent, say in Season 4. It was basically completely silent, especially we were losing. Nobody was saying anything. Late game, if we were winning, Froggen would usually say a lot of things, but that's like, we just listened to Froggen. But he wasn't our only soul. He didn't shot call everything. He didn't shot call macro rotations or something like that. He just shot called team fights and like Baron baits pretty much. That's what he did. Yeah, it's one of our very big problems. And I think if we fix that, our team will be a lot stronger. I've already mentioned this actually right away in season 4 when we were playing. I was like, really, we don't talk enough. We don't have a shot caller. Like, our information transfer is like so bad between each other. TeamSpeak is just dead, and like we have to fix this.
So one of the areas as well that leads on to the idea of shot calling and strategy is like, how do you analyze the game? How do you break it down strategically? And when I talked to Froggen on this episode of my talk show I did, he gave like the typical Western star player view on analysts, which goes like this. Oh, I'd love to have an analyst. Yeah, I'd love it if I had like Monte Cristo, or they always name someone famous that is like totally unavailable. But then they're like, but you know, unless it was like an absolutely really, really good guy, then no, I wouldn't want them. And so the problem is well, Monte Cristo exists, but he's already on a team, okay? So if you want someone else, since there's no one else famous who's an analyst, it's going to have to be a no-namer, right? And they're going to have to prove themselves, and they're probably not going to be amazing to begin with. Since now you've got the 2 analysts, is this like a commitment that we're always going to have analysts, we're always going to have some sort of coaching? Like, how have you gotten over that problem? Because it sounded before like unless someone just miraculously came out of thin air, like there was never going to be an analyst, right?
Yeah, I think it's about 2 things. It's first off, it's having qualified people that know what to do. Because if you have qualified people and you know they're good at what they do, then you respect them and you respect their opinions. If you have, let's say, someone who you don't respect and you have them analyze or coach for you, they will just be brushed off. You know, their advice won't be taken seriously. It's like and that leads me to my second point, where players in Europe have like the big egos, where they think their opinion is the best, and an analyst said, oh, he's just a Diamond 5 player. How could his opinion possibly be better than mine? You know, like, that's the kind of mindset that a lot of people have. And if you let go of that and get a right person, I think you can improve a lot as a team.
Okay, listen, that's a great perspective, and if that's totally true, then wonderful. Let's wait for next season of Alliance. But when you were describing that there, okay, people who, you know, this Diamond 5 player doesn't know what he's talking about. I started thinking of different players in Alliance, okay, and I imagined someone sitting down with Wicked, like, listen, these are the really good champions at top, and these builds are being used, and he'd be like, listen, man, I gotta tell you that the reason why I'm doing that build is because I do it like this, and people don't know. She's really strong against her, man. Aurelia's coming back. Like, I could already see that happening. Then I can see Froggen, you know, he's like, what do you mean LeBlanc beats Kathus? Are you fucking crazy? Like, how is this part going to be integrated, Tams? Is there really going to be progress made there?
Well, I think so, yeah. I actually think that it's going to work out, yeah. Although we already ran into the Wicked and Champion 4 item build thing earlier today and yesterday. And we were like, yeah, we're going to discuss this some other time, you know, because right now we have to focus on practice and we don't want to sit an hour here discussing this. So yeah, it will definitely be approved in the future.
Okay.
I think we can do it. Yeah.
Fair enough. Because an area this leads into is the comments you recently made about Fnatic. Because the big problem is everyone was watching this All-Star tournament, and in theory, it's built like it's got such a good billing, okay, which is like the best teams from each region are going to battle. And so people are thinking, oh, well, Fnatic have been the best in Europe. Let's see how they represent Europe, you know. And then obviously they went like 1-6. And so then everyone immediately is just like, we must figure out within the 5 minutes what is wrong with Fnatic and all of Europe as an entire region who are obviously shit. So you made these comments where you quite reasonably lined out, like, you know, there's not really a hierarchy above players. They sort of run the team in a way. There's not really analysis and there's not proper practice and these sorts of things. Could you go into a couple of these areas, like pick out some things that you, like maybe people don't understand in the public that you're seeing behind the scenes? Like, this is clearly holding us back, you know?
Yeah. So the way I present it is like, say in Korea, the coach and the staff, the analysts, they create the team, right? They get the 5 players together and they decide the roster and everything. So the players are below the staff in the hierarchy. They have no like less authority. They have to listen to them, and that's like really important, because when you put the players on a pedestal, like when you put them at the top, you have 5 people that are all equally authoritative at the top, that they just have to argue with each other over things, and like it's never gonna end as well as when you have like 1 or 2 people leading a group of 5 people that have to listen to that 1 or 2 guys. That's like really important thing to know, and that's also one of the reasons why I was like on the off season, I really wanted to get an analyst and get a staff and stuff like that, so we could have this kind of infrastructure. I was contacting many people and talking to many people because I really wanted to make it happen. I think it's very important to have this kind of stuff because if you look at Fnatic, I think their inconsistency, like going 7-0 in the start and going 0-7 or what was it, like right afterwards, like I think that kind of stuff is like really easy to prevent if you just have like the right mindset, the right coach to help you through your practice and your day. Because I think people in Fnatic are like very lazy in a sense that they get to control whatever they want to do. They can do whatever they want, you know. Well, we're the best in Europe. We can just do whatever we want and we'll still win. That's kind of, I don't know. I'm just judging here, you know. Like I'm making it from an outsider. Like I don't know Fnatic, but that's like how they come over to me as a player as well as a person. And I think that a lot of their problems could be solved as well by getting just a good staff.
Okay, but Tabs, Soaz said that they're the most dedicated team in Europe. What's going on here? I don't understand.
Yeah, that goes back to my other point, where it's in like the players' egos preventing them from improving as a team. Because Soaz is like, already I want to mention this, like some of these players are gonna be like, you know, you brought up before, like, oh, the no LeBlanc v Skarsa thing, and like, well, Wicked, what champions do you play? You know, that's the kind of problem that Soaz could have in this team because, you know, some people are just really stubborn like that, and you gotta let it go for the better of your team.
How as an opponent of Fnatic, where you had to play them in the last two playoffs in your different teams, how do they do it? Like except for that first split of LCS, the spring one, where they were like top at the end of the regular season, then they just won the final anyway and beat Gambit. The other two splits have been the same story, which is that they have like a really good period, they have a really bad period, and at the end somehow it always turns around. And no matter, even if you think you've got them, just at the end in the playoffs, something happens and they win. Like, I mean, it must seem like bullshit when it happens once, but how does it keep happening? What's your theory?
I don't know. It's like crazy. Like this Fnatic is like the most inconsistent team ever regarding this kind of stuff. You know, you never know what Fnatic is gonna do or gonna pull out. Like you never know how Pekka is gonna perform. He's gonna go 0-5 in lane and feed and lose the game, or like if he's gonna like carry the game and be super good. And same goes for Soaz, really. Like some games he's like amazing. Like other games he just doesn't really do anything. And it's like that. If you have two solo laners like that, it's like. I think if those two players like really motivate and really want to win, then they can perform really well. They can be like the best in their roles even. But they sometimes just don't do it. And I'm like, why? Why do you go 0-7? Why? It makes no sense to me. Like they keep pulling it off at the right times, like in the playoffs, you know? When they need to perform, they do. I mean, I couldn't say it about All-Stars, I guess, but that's like the oddball out so far. For the rest, they've always managed to like pull it out in the end and somehow win everything.
One of the things about their team is they're the only team I can think of in Europe where almost every player is either considered like top 2 or top 3 at his position. So in theory, they're like an all-star team of their own. You know, they're like all these talented players. And obviously that means when everyone's on fire, you can just blow everyone out the server in theory. But it also would lend to the fact that if people aren't playing well, then maybe your teamwork or your strategy aspect hasn't been emphasized enough. Since Fnatic at the moment is like the figurehead team in Europe, they're the ones leading the way by winning the split. Does it say something about Europe in terms of the emphasis on tactics and macro strategy and rotations and all the shit Monte Cristo says every 5 seconds? That even the best team in Europe, who keeps winning every time, kind of has like 1 or 2 styles. They're not really like all the different styles, and they don't seem like they're the same as like a Cloud9, even an SK. These teams. What does it say about Europe that sense? Do you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think Europe since the start has been the kind of region where everyone makes plays and wins by fighting and just mechanical outplays and stuff like that. Like our macro strategy is horrible. Like it's terrible. Like it's always been terrible, except for M5 maybe. Like they're the only team that actually was decent at it back in the day. Not even so much anymore. But as a region, we always just want to be the better. We're like really cocky, you know. You hear like EOS is toxic. Like if you go to EOS, you will get flamed and your mother will get fucked and like everyone will wish your family to get cancer and stuff, you know? That's like the kind of impression everyone has from Europe, but it also says something about our players. Like a lot of our players are just really toxic and they have a really big ego and they want to show like they are the best players. So there's less focus on macro strategy and more on like individual outplay and showing like I am better than you and I can beat you and stuff like that.
So one of the things was that whenever any Western team does badly and the regions do, like at a Worlds type scenario or this All-Star tournament, fans always say the same really stupid like criticism, which I can understand why they think it's good, but it doesn't make any sense in logic, which they go like this, like, you fucking Western pros, you just want to be famous and rich. Why don't you practice 12 hours a day like the Korean people do? But I've seen you say on your Ask FM, like, you can't practice like even 8 hours a day constantly every day for 3 months or you'll go fucking crazy. Like, you just can't do it. Like, what, like, obviously that isn't an area that you can improve in, right? It's not just sheer hours. What do you think the difference is, and what do you think on this topic? Because obviously people think, well, you're a pro, you're supposed to just play all day long.
Yeah, I think it's also about upbringing in a sense, whereas the Asians, I'm not sure if might not even be wrong. I might even be wrong on this, but like we are brought up and we don't have like the same like work ethic, if I'm right. But like how am I gonna explain this? It's really hard for me personally to play that much. Like in Lemondogs, we played 8 hours a day, every day. We scrimmed 8 hours, no matter what. We didn't really do anything else in our day other than playing League of Legends. So after 3 months, like the whole season long, right, and like Worlds, or it was 3 or 4 months, we played 8 hours every single day, no exceptions. We didn't have any breaks. We didn't really do anything else than playing. And at the end, I was really burned out. I was like even considering retiring from League of Legends. Like I was like really, really bummed out. I was depressed as fuck. I was like really sad all the time. And it's definitely for me, it's like a real thing like that I have to be careful of. Like I have to like balance my life correctly, because if I don't, then it's even gonna show in my performance. Even if I do play more, it's not gonna help. Like I think if you can play 12 hours, 16 hours a day, like you hear the Korean pros do, and still like enjoy every single bit of it, or like have not even enjoy but have the discipline to be able to do that and keep improving, that's like incredible to me. Like I wish I could do that, really. Like I think that's why in a sense I've always been jealous of Mythy in that sense, and Zoro, because they could play no problem like 14 hours a day and they would keep getting better and better. And I could like after 8 hours of playing, I would like after a loss I would just go really mad and I would just not feel like playing anymore.
So there's a degree to which when people hear this story of like the problems with having to practice that much, etc., they're going to think to themselves like, is there any way to close the gap? Okay, because at the moment I've noticed the way people think is they think, okay, if Korea's in front of everyone, then to catch up we have to do whatever Korea's doing. Whereas, like, I'm not really sure that actually works. Like, is there some sort of strength you think the West can have that Korea doesn't have, or some different way of thinking or playing, maybe? Because, I mean, Europe has a distinctly different style overall. So is there something that the West can do on its own to either gain a bit of ground or catch up in some way?
It's hard to say. I do think that Western players can be as good as Korean players individually. Back when I was on Millennium, actually, when I played my really, like, the first games against the Koreans, like at IEM Hanover and stuff, I was playing against like Mid King from LG and stuff, and I was like, wow, these guys are like beatable. Like I'm playing Rapid Star, like this guy's a Korean, but he's not even that great individually. Like, I had much higher opinion of him going into this tournament. I was like kind of scared. I was like, wow, this guy's a Korean. He must be really, really good. And I noticed like I was probably even better individually than these players were, and that's really opened my eyes in that sense, because I thought, if they're not even better than us individually, why are they winning against us? And that's really like gave me the idea of behind the players and like how they work together in teamwork, and they're going back to the whole organization and coaching and analyze and that stuff. I think if the Europeans manage to get like the same ethic as like the Koreans do, and that they can easily gain ground on the Koreans and perform just as well as they do.
When people saw your comments about Fnatic and saying like the problems that as a region it showed about Europe, like not having proper coaching or practicing problems, etc., and you mentioned within that, like, oh, it seemed like NA were making more progress there because they're getting coaches and they're putting more focus on analysts and all that stuff. some people are going to obviously draw like the fucking Twitch chat conclusion, like NA over EU confirmed by tabs. But like, there's a degree to which, from your answers here, like how skilled do you think the Europeans are? Do you think the talent base in Europe is better than NA?
Probably not anymore. I used to think so, but right now, I wouldn't really say so. Like, Extinct left the scene, like, Nip is not even in LCS, like, Zoro is retiring. Like, there's a lot of players that just aren't there anymore that I used to think were, like, really talented. And NA is really picking up the pace of getting that mentality and getting the coaches, like TSM and CLG, C9. Those are, like, the three big examples that I would like Europe to follow in that sense, because like CLG especially has been doing phenomenally, like compared to like the season they did before. Like they listened and they improved a lot, and I was kind of scared that Europe would fall really far behind because of that. Like we didn't have anything like that. Like we were just still the same. Like you could see Fnatic just losing in All-Stars so much when C9 was actually like winning a lot of games, where Fnatic was just getting blown out of the water. That's like you could definitely say that some of those teams in NA are like better than EU teams, especially because they are starting, that they're laying the bricks, you know, laying the foundation of what makes a really good team that could eventually like win a lot of things, and that's how I want Europe to become as well.
So how would you explain for me the mentality of Nukeduck and Zoro0? Because when I did a mixture of interviews and talking to them, I would always like check in on their status when they were in this challenger team, like finding out what they were thinking of like the promotion and stuff. And after the promotion, you know, everyone thought, okay, oh well, it's the done deal. You know, Zoro0 will get this awesome offer from CLG. He'll go off to NA, and you know, well, we're all waiting for that. Like he'll just crush all the NA top laners. You know, this will be the way it's supposed to go. And then people thought the same thing. Okay, well, there's all these teams need a mid laner. Nukeduck, there's no point staying in NiP now because you're not in LCS, so he'll go off as well. And yet both of these players turned down all their offers, even from LCS teams. Zoro0 outright retired after all those hours playing every single day. Nukeduck's even essentially made it like he actually wants to be in a challenger team or something weird like that. Like, how can you explain the mentality of these people? Because these were people who at one point were at the top of Europe, and if they wanted to, they could hop right back in at maybe like the 4th best LCS team or something. So why do you think they don't want to just take that route? Why have they decided to do this route instead, do you think?
Okay, so first I'll start with Zoro. Like, my experience with Zoro is that he's like an incredible guy. Like, he's really nice, he's really awesome, he's really humble. He's not cocky at all. Like, even though our team was really cocky, he was like a very smart guy as well. And the impression I had of him is that he just always like wants to have fun in life, and he doesn't really care too much about everything. Like, obviously he cares about things, but he just goes with the flow, you know? Like, when he was retiring, it's probably like he would just consider, well, I could go to NA and I could play there, but then I would like leave all my friends behind, and I don't really want to go to another continent. I'd rather just stay in Europe and have fun and just go back to school, maybe come back later. You know, that's like the kind of impression I got from him. And I think that I kind of even expected it to happen. I didn't really think that he was kind of guy that would like to move across the ocean. Just like, he's not that ambitious in that sense. I don't think he is like the most ambitious player. And when you go to Nukeduck is like a really special case. Like, he has his own opinion about everything. He has his own perspective. It's like the Nukeduck perspective on things. It's like different from everyone else's, and he doesn't think like everyone else either. So like, his mindset might even be like the hardest to explain. Like, he thinks he's like really good, and like he wants to be on the best team possible, and I don't even know if he got an offer, to be honest, of any other team. I don't think he did. He might have taken it if he did, but I think in mindset he's very similar to Mithy. Nukeduck and Mithy are very similar in that sense, where they just want to be. They both have their own different view on things, and they just want to be in the best team they think, in their opinion, they can get. And at that time, like, it was, you know, when LD broke up, it was NiP. They thought that roster was the best, and they just went with it. And now they just stayed in Challenger. Like, Mithy even got offers from LCS teams, and I know that. But he turned it down to make his own Challenger team because he thought, like, the teams he played with, he tried out for in LCS, they just weren't his kind of team. Like, he didn't like playing in them. He didn't like see the potential in them, or they didn't mesh well with him. And he would rather stay with Nukeduck and make his own team in Challenger that, in his perspective and Nukeduck's perspective, would be better than the LCS teams, you know, and that would be make him happy already.
Everyone at the moment is still waiting to find out, like, how will Alexic do when he goes to the top lane? Because obviously, Alexic, the mid laner, was awesome even till the end. Like, he still had times when he could turn it on and just own everyone. As someone who was a mid laner yourself and you changed position, if you had to predict now, do you really think, can he really, like, will he actually become like a really, really good top laner? Does he even have to be that for that team to work, do you think? What's your realistic sense of it? Because it's very rare that someone does switch positions and be better at the new position, you know?
It's hard to say. I think he can definitely do very well. He's the kind of player that, well, from what I've heard from Nuke and Mithy, from what they played with him, that he's like very smart about the game and he will be able to adapt to his new role. And I think also that leaving Gambit and changing roles gave Alexic a lot of motivation to start working hard again and become like really good again, because Alex was actually like kind of falling off as a mid player during the time. I think it's because he was getting very demotivated because of his issues, his travel, his team doing poorly. And I think it gave him a lot of motivation to hop over to a new team, leave his past behind in that sense, start over. And that can be very motivating for someone. Like, you have an entire new lane to learn. It's like really cool. Like, you have all these new things and it's like really interesting to learn new things. Like, I was the same. When I switched from mid to AD, I was like, wow, there's so many new champions I can learn. This is so awesome. Like, I would go to sleep and I would wake up and I was like, wow, I really want to play Ezreal all day. Like, this champion, I don't know him, but he's like so awesome. So I'm gonna play him like 10 games today. Like, it's like, wow, I really want to learn more about this role and become better. And if Alex has the same motivation and mindset as I had in that switch, and he can definitely become a very successful top laner.
When you think of your whole career playing AD carry, even though everyone said, okay, in Lemondogs every lane was the best in Europe at the time and all that, did you really think like I was the best AD carry as well, that split?
I think I was the best AD carry that split, yeah, in LCS for sure. During the later of summer, yes. In the start of summer, I wasn't really sure. I was pretty, like, I think Kratom was the best in the start, especially before he broke his hand. Like, he was like a god on Ezreal. Like, he was the Ezreal god. He would do things on a champion that I didn't even imagine were possible. Like, he would pull off like crazy stuff. And then like Ezreal fell out of the meta, he broke his hand. And like, really unfortunate, but he never really managed to get back to his like old glory. And I think that's when I became like the best. I think the only like second best would probably be like Candy Panda was really good then. And Kratom was also like still pretty decent.
If you look forwards now, from reading some of your answers, it sounds like, okay, like you were saying before, you aren't someone who can just play 13 hours a day, okay, and just go like, I'm just going to do the max I possibly can. Is there a degree to which, like, are you someone who has to be the best AD carry? Is that like, that is my one burning goal? Would you, if the team can win and you can just be the third best AD carry in Europe, is that okay for you?
No, it's not. I feel actually like when someone calls someone else better than me, I get like, it hurts me so much, you know? I say like, wow, this guy is so much better than Taps. Like it hurts. Like, I really want to be that guy that's like the best and everyone praises him, obviously. That's like why I'm even in esports, because I really like that. And I think I can be. I do have that burning desire to be the best. And I think that's also what made me so good in the summer split and allowed me to be the best AD in the US at that time. But in a sense, I became happy with my situation, complacent, I don't know how you call it, that I didn't really improve that much anymore. And now there's like new talent on the scene. You have Reckless, you have Relish, you had Forgiven, past tense, of course. But those players really like opened the doors to like new styles of playing and new like raised the bar of AD carry in Europe, and that made me like drop from first like to fourth like right away. And that was like, wow, like I fucking suck now, really. And, like, I had to learn and like learn. It was like kind of fun to become better and better again. And I think right now that I can be on the same level as them.
Okay, so when you're telling me like you don't want people to just say this guy's better, okay, at least not if it's not entirely true, okay. So I've got a good example for you. I want to talk to you about this young man who plays AD carry for Fnatic. His name's Reckless, and the thing about Reckless is I've noticed from talking to other AD carries, there's a gap between where a lot of the fans think of him and where a lot of his peers think of him. Like, everyone admits he is good, okay? And some people say he's very good. But fans will tell you he's the absolute best AD carry in Europe. He's as good as all the Korean AD carries. But I've heard some of his peers, some other AD carries, tell me like they think the fact his team wins so much makes him look better, or his style within his team. Like, for example, Freeze told me this. He thinks his style is a bit safer in team fights, so he's going to pick up all the kills, you know, he's going to last hit all the champions. What can you tell me about these two aspects? Like, is he the best? How would he match up against Koreans? What do you think of it?
The best at his style, yes. He is the best at his style of playing AD carry, which is risk-free, playing safe in lane, like occasionally trading. His trading is not very good. It's okay, but it's not the best. Like, Forgiven and Rollis are better at trading than Reckless is. But Reckless is he's like really good at like getting every single CS in the lane, like just farming all the time, never dying in team fights. He will never be out of position. He will always be in the back line. He will never try to make plays in fights. He will never flash forward and stuff, like trying to make kills and plays. He'll always just be in the back and be that consistent AD carry player, you know, that never dies and picks up the kills at the end. And in that style, I think he is better than everyone else. I think like Freeze plays a similar style to him actually, but I think Freeze would be like a worse version of Reckless in that sense. And I think that Forgiven is better at playing the aggressive style, and so is Reckless. I mean, Rollis. They're both better at playing the aggressive style of AD, where you really try to force trades in lane and you play very aggressively in team fights without giving away your position. You try to like have the maximum impact possible, even if it puts you into a slightly like more dangerous position. Like Reckless wouldn't do that, for example.
And when you talk about Forgiven, this is another thing. Everyone I've seen, even people who don't like him, have credited like, no, he's really good. Like, his mechanical skills are nuts. Was this guy really just a no-namer who we never saw, and then he just somehow comes into LCS? He's wrecking everyone, even though he's on in theory, one of the worst teams. Like, how can this be?
It's kind of crazy, right? From what I've learned about him is that he's like a guy from Greece who used to play on the EU Nordic East server. And then one day he decided to swap over to EU West and go competitive. So he trained like 5 hours a day, like really seriously, like, and took everything super seriously and duo queued every game. Like, tried to become the best player possible. And he was already really good when I was on EU Nordic East. He was the best player on the AD carry by far in that server. So when he came to EU, he actually like won a lot. He was already really good, and he came to the top of Challenger, and he actually impressed a lot of people and got picked up. That's like the best way to even get picked up into an LCS team. It's like kind of crazy that he came from nowhere. Yeah, it's true.
As an actual player, though, because here's the thing I'm trying to figure out about that guy. I hate like really lazy explanations that just seem like too easy. Like the person didn't put much thought into it. So the storyline on Forgiven is supposed to be that, you know, he's just super toxic and no one can handle playing with him. But actually, what's funny is when I look at the comments that have upset people, some of it, he's not even directly saying like my teammates suck. It's more like frustration. Like, it's possible.
Yeah.
Oh, think of that example you gave before where you even said, okay, you thought Froggen played awesome in the series against Fnatic, but you yourself made some mistakes and you felt like you sort of gave away the game for Froggen in that game.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's possible Froggen could feel like, I did almost everything I could, but I lost. So that could be frustrating, okay? Now, a guy with a different personality like Forgiven, it sounds like he was doing very well and he was the star of his team, but his team wasn't good enough to get them into like wherever he wanted to be. I don't know, top 3, top 2, whatever he thought he could do. Is this a sense you get from it? Well, like how much of it is fair, and how much of it's like maybe you're going over the line? What do you think?
I actually have a little story about this. So Forgiven is a very emotional person. Like how he comes over to me, he's brutally honest, and he gets very emotional as well. Like, even emotional to the point where he just like can't hold in his feelings. You know, he has like type it out to someone or something. You know, and he has a lot of passion, like, for everything he does in his life, I think. So he puts his heart into everything he does. But the way I want to tie this into the story is because, like, back when Nib ditched me, like, I was considering recreating Lemon Dogs with, like, Dexter, and then me mid, and then I wanted to search for an AD carry, and I read his AMA on Reddit, and the way he talked and the way he talked about his practice and stuff, it like really impressed me, and I thought like, wow, the guy's like a really unique, and I think I see a lot of potential in him, and that's why I wanted him to play AD for that Lemondogs lineup for season 4, and it kind of like it's fun to see him actually go into LCS and then be the player I expected him to be. I mean, I didn't really know much about his personality at that point, but I knew he was like very passionate and very smart about like how to practice, and he's really good at that. And yeah, it's I don't know what more to say about that.
So the top players who are AD carry in Europe, is it like I said about the Reckless scenario? Would they really be comparable to these amazing Asian AD carries you see? What's your sense? I mean, you've played some of them, you've seen some of them in tournaments.
Mechanically, I think like, yeah, we can compare to them. It's like hard to say because we never really play against each other. Like if you have more international tournaments, you can judge better because you'll always get the best judgment of a player if you actually play against him. Before that, it's only observations. And I think that we do have the talent now to be able to like beat the Asians and the Americans. Like even in season 3, people were saying like, oh, the NA AD carries are better than the EU ones. Like EU's weak spot is AD carry, they're all bad, and all the NA are the best. We have Doublelift, we have all these amazing players like Wire Turtle, and EU all sucks. And like now we've actually had a lot of new talent come into the scene, and I think these players are actually like the new top of Europe in AD carry are actually, in my opinion, comparable to the Asians.
Well, you're saying this, but I heard the same thing after All Stars. Like, you know, it's the old thing about NA. They say that, oh well, no matter, even if Europe has the best mids, well, we have the best AD carries, you know, in North America. That's not the case anymore.
It would be hard to say either way, but I would definitely think that the level of AD carry in Europe has massively increased since start of season 4.
Okay, fair enough. You once said, when someone asked you if you could like change anything about League of Legends, you kind of joked and said like, I'm biased, so I'd just change it to make whatever role I played the most carry like orientated it could be.
Yeah.
So let's imagine you could do that. Now, you can't make ridiculous changes, like you can't make the fucking top laner spawn with 1 health or something, but just reasonable changes. Give me like a couple of reasonable changes that would make Tabs like the god of AD carries. So come on, what champions do we need to buff here? What are we going to change just to make Tabs go ham on everyone every game?
If you ask me this question, I don't even want to make changes to AD carries. I want to make changes to all the roles.
Okay, what are we doing then?
I wanna like nerf support so they only have a size 1 and boots at the end of the game. And I want to nerf junglers so they're not as tanky anymore. And like top laners, I guess. We could nerf tank items in general. So damage itemization is more efficient compared to defensive itemization.
Aren't we just going back in time to like season 2 now?
Yeah, pretty much. No, that's kind of how it is. Like, yeah.
How is that actually, that balance of the game? How has it gone for you? Because you were one of the people where you were always complaining about like, oh, the tanks are too tanky, man. Like I can't do. Like Zoro Zero even told me in his reflections that you were always just messaging him like, AD carries can't do anything, man. And meanwhile, he was like playing fucking Renekton, so he was like, haha, no, I think it's fine, perfectly fine. Like, what do you think of the balance now?
I think it's a lot better than the start of season 4 because in the start of season 4 you had. In bot lane, you had the AD, but then you had the support who started with Doran Shield, so the support was a god. You couldn't even touch him. He could like molest you and like touch you in all the places he wanted. You couldn't do anything. Trading was out of the game. You just had to hug your tower and like wait until your jungler ganked and not die to the enemy jungler. And then in top lane, you had Shyvana and Mundo were unkillable tanks, and AD carries basically just, oh well, I just farm until 30 minutes. I hope I have 4 items, and I hope the enemy top laner hasn't bought random and Stormmill yet. Then maybe I can win this game, like have any impact. But in this meta right now, it's a lot better now. Now that they nerfed Doran Shield, the support start with gold items. The bot lane is a lot more balanced. Hyper carries are coming back, which I like a lot. it's my preferred style of play actually. So supports are weaker, bot lane is more balanced. There's more trading, more poking, and less all in, all or nothing, like hug your tower or lose the game kind of play. And top lane, yeah, they have been nerfed a lot actually. Like there's been repeated nerfs to tank items for top lanes, and the defensive masteries like Perseverance, which healed like 5% of your missing health every 5 seconds, which was just ridiculously broken. This mastery was just fucking stupid. Seriously, it was so broken. And yeah, like the game is in a lot better spot than it was in the start of season 4. It's not quite there to my ideal MOBA game, like where the supports are weaker, jungles are weaker, and you basically have 3 carry roles. But it's better. The role distribution is better. Like the power distribution is better than it was. And I hope it will like continue to become better, like or not better, more like how I see it to be good.
The strange thing is, when you described it like that, okay, like what you just said there, like more like a standard MOBA game of like the 3 carries and the 2 supportive roles, people will think, oh, well, he's just biased because he's a carry. He wants his carry to be stronger. What's funny is almost every single support player I talked to who was a really good support in Season 3 actually themselves want that, because they feel like because it's way harder to be a support then. Like if they're really good, they have kind of like more of an edge on the other player. You know, he's not as tanky, or he doesn't start, I get more items, etc. It doesn't get as much gold. So it sounds like a lot of good players actually kind of agree with that mentality. Like, what do you think a MOBA should be in that sense? Like, is it a mistake to have like the solo queue mentality of like every role should be able to carry and should be able to have equal game impact and all that? Is that like a bad idea?
I think equal game impact, yes. But Riot are putting it the wrong way by giving everyone gold and living out their like endgame fantasy. Like they will want everyone to have massive amount of gold and be able to purchase items and do a lot of crazy stuff. But when you come back to the point of everyone having influence in the game, equal influence in the game, that's possible, but in a different way. You can't just give everyone, like you can't just bloat League of Legends with like overflowing amounts of cash and everyone can buy everything they want and have fun. The way you have to do it is just by balancing roles, as in their roles, what they have, their niches. Like you said to me, supports wanted it back to how it was in Season 3, and that's because they had a niche. You could do, like, being a good support was do as much as you can with these little resources that you have and have the most impact that way. And supports were kind of sad that they lost that niche, and instead everyone could just buy all these items and do just as good as them. You know, they lost their niche in that sense.
Okay, for my last question, it's not aliens this time. This time what we're going to do, because I looked through, when I had to look through this Ask FM page and I had to go through all these questions, you know, I'm hoping it's all going to be about League of Legends. I can read some interesting stuff. But instead I found out like way too much about specific types of anime that you like, which doesn't, I don't really care about that myself. Yeah. But apparently your fans really care about this. So what happens now is that you have to describe every member of Alliance, you know, these mysterious guys, using an anime character.
Yeah.
So who actually would qualify for each one, do you think?
Okay, so first off it would be like Wicked is, it's like funny, it's like the comedic relief guy. So he would be like Maiko from Nisekoi. And then next you have Shuk, our juggler. He would be like the silent guy who just goes with the flow and lets other guys like drag him on. And it would be Yajiro from Uchoten Kazuku. And then you have Froggen, of course. Froggen in the mid lane. He's like the hardworking guy. He will never give up until he achieves what he wants. And he would be Ryuko Matoi from Kill la Kill. And then Nif, he's caring and he's always there when you need him.
Oh my god, who's this going to be?
He's going to be Araragi from Bakemonogatari.
Okay.
And I don't know, for myself, I'm usually just the kind of guy that just like sits in my room and does dumb shit and like browse the internet. So I would be like Jun Sakurada from Rosen Maiden.
Okay, do you have any final words? Someone you want to thank or say hello to at the end?
I guess thanks to like all my fans who've been supporting me ever since the start, like Eclipse Chat, Millennium and stuff. I love them. And of course, Alliance's sponsors, HyperX. Yeah, that's about it.
Dankjewel.
Geen probleem.